Hello and welcome to the show. I'm delighted to say we have a very special panel of guests for you today. I will introduce them all, they will all say hello, and then we will have a chat about the thing that joins us all together, which is, of course, Formula One. So let's start off with introducing you to Tom Kerridge, who's a chef and has been exceptionally busy, even though he hasn't been able to open the doors of his restaurant for a while. Tom, how are you in this weird world we find ourselves in?
I'm all right. Weird is probably the best way of describing it. Yeah, I'm weird. It's been a funny old place. You know, you have 6 businesses that revolve around food and drink and events and bits and bobs, and you aren't able to do any of them. So I've been trying to keep myself busy for what feels like years now.
Bless you. Yeah, it's a very strange time.
Yeah.
Okay, next up we have Alastair Stewart, broadcaster, journalist, newsreader. Alastair, you have also found yourself to be resting for a little while, but F1's kept you busy.
It always does, and thoroughly enjoying it. And the fact that it's been an extraordinary season in extraordinary times. But I talk a lot to Rory Bremner because we both have kids who do show jumping, and Rory loves F1. And listening to a lot of Pink Floyd because Nick Mason drums like nobody else, and he too likes F1. So there is a beautiful circularity to it all, but thank God, sanity. I mean, it's been tricky, but thank God for sanity.
Next up, let me introduce Liam Cunningham, who is an Irish actor. You may well know him, you may well get who he is. However, you are also resting because of these strange times. How have you been finding it? Are you over in Ireland at the moment?
I am indeed, yes. This is I'm my home in Dublin. I'm a suburbanite. Yes, it's been rather quiet. I know the actors get the whole thing about we're resting, but resting for a year is a little too long. Yeah, and with me, it's just apart from some animation where I've been locked in a glass box talking into a microphone. But it's very bizarre. I haven't been in front of a camera since last December. It's very odd times.
It really is strange, but I suppose we're all clinging on to the slight normality that has been the F1 season this year. It's been thrilling, it's been exciting. We've still got 3 races to go, but the championship is of course done. And I wanted to start off by asking you, Liam, we've had an epic season, and they have managed to have almost a normal season, it feels like, to some extent. It's quite incredible what F1 have managed to do, isn't it?
It's absolutely extraordinary. At the beginning, when they were talking about maybe putting a few races on and keeping things going and whatever it may be, for me, it was a sharp intake of breath, and I'm kind of going, there's a sense of clutching at straws here. It really did appear like that. I thought they were majorly overextending themselves, and then what we've just seen throughout the year, it's been one of the most exciting seasons for possibly a decade, maybe more. And to pull it off, I mean, the logistics involved are absolutely extraordinary with the the amount of pressure they're under with the bubbles and all that sort of stuff. I don't know how they've managed to do it. I mean, hats off to them. It's an extraordinary season, and to be able to pull it off under these conditions is doubly extraordinary.
Tom, I've bumped into you on many a nice grid, and it's something that I haven't been able to do this year. Have you missed being at races?
It's terribly sad, but like Liam was saying, it's amazing to be able to watch on television. This season has been fantastic, particularly, I mean, obviously Mercedes has dominated, but underneath there, it's been really interesting to see Ferrari thrown into the mix as well, in that kind of like who's going to be second, third, fourth, you know, that like it has been a fantastic season. But yeah, in terms of not actually being there, the buzz, the excitement, everything that you love about going to any events anyway, like any sporting occasion you go to, whether it's a cricket match, rugby, football, whatever, is great. There's a magical buzz that goes on. It's more than just the race at F1. It's the people that are there, everything that's happening, the noises, it's such a, it feels like there's a little piece missing in it, and it's magical when you're there. So hugely missed this year. Just the noise, the real life noise of that car when it goes past you, like it comes, it's inside, isn't it? It has that, it vibrates right through your stomach and your ribs, and that feeling is not having that this year is sad.
We've gone to some great tracks this year. Nobody would have expected Lewis Hamilton to tie up his championship in Turkey in November of all places. But those tracks that we've been lucky enough to go to this year, they've been brilliant.
Yeah, and also some of the favourite tracks twice, which has been great fun. And also there've been so many lovely twists to it, which this great sport always provides. I mean, like, yes, you say Turkey and Lewis clinching the 7th, but yeah, in the rain. You know, you say Turkey, it's where folk like to go for a holiday and stuff, but there it's in the rain. But the other thing, just to pick up on what Liam and Tom were saying about the magic of it, is you've also, you know, watching drivers who, you know, haven't got to drive next year, but doing really well. Kids like Lando Norris coming through and regularly sneaking into the points and doing fantastically. And then the great Lewis Hamilton missing a red light going into the pits and doing practice starts in the wrong place. Yeah, it's a magical sport. It is not what these boring people say is, you know, 22 guys going around circles very, very fast. Even despite all the COVID disruption, it's been magnificent and I've loved every minute of it.
Did you all watch the race in Turkey? And if you did, because we've all got time on our hands a little bit, what did you make of it? Tom, did you get to watch it?
I saw the second half of it. I was caught with my little man in the park and he wouldn't leave. I was, we were playing on the slides and the swings. I was like, come on, we've got to go home now. And I couldn't, like, we really got to go home now. But I couldn't. So I managed to get back for the second half of it. And like finding Lewis in front was just, I mean, it was just, yeah, it's amazing. And you can't think of anybody that, you know, in the wet, what a phenomenal drive it was. I mean, it was brilliant to watch. You're waiting for every minute of it. You were looking. I actually watched it on catch up twice because I'm just waiting. You're just waiting for everybody at any corner to just to spin and lose it. So it was a great race to watch. Absolutely fantastic.
It was brilliant. You know what was brilliant about it? I think the old heads came out, the experienced boys. Lewis, yeah. Sebastian and whatever, and Checo as well at the end. And the youngsters kind of, their inexperience showed. Leclerc blew it, you know, and a lot of people said Stroll did it, although he had a front, his tyres went off very quickly because they found out later that it was the front wing, wasn't it? There was damage with the front wing. So it was mechanical problem. But to watch Lewis and those, they were taking, I was reading that the Mercedes were taking up to 7 laps to get the tires to a working temperature before they switched on. Apart from that, you were running on granite wheels, more or less. It was an extraordinary drive from Lewis. It's very easy to say, oh, he nicked it at the end and all that. It wasn't. There was a campaign right through that race where he was eking himself forward. It was a magnificent display of driving from Lewis, a deserved win of that championship and the race. It was just a beautiful, beautiful drive.
And 2 fundamental mistakes in the first 10 laps that saw him drop down the grid, down as far as 7th, and then weave his way back up. And to me, Jenny, one of the key things, and it is a defining point now of the mature, perfect product that Lewis Hamilton is, even when Bono said, we built up enough time for a final safety tyre change just to make sure nothing goes wrong. Pause, Lewis, nah. I'll stick with it. We're okay. I mean, one of the commentators, it may have been you, I can't remember, said he's taken command.
Probably wasn't me. That sounds very sensible. I was probably going, what's he doing?
You talk about hot bottoms and stuff like that, so I'll accept that.
Delighted to say we have a little cameo guest appearance. All the way from Australia, Adam Gilchrist. Hello, how are you doing? Australian cricketer extraordinaire. How's life treating you?
Yeah, hi Jenny, hi guys. Sorry, I'm a little bit late here. We're always a bit behind down in Perth, so a little bit slow off the mark. But yeah, great to join you. Thanks for the invite. We're going really well down here. Obviously, notwithstanding everything that's going on around the world, I think relative terms, Australia's gone pretty well. We've had a few scares here and there with the COVID scenario. A little bit of an issue now with Adelaide just possibly spiking again. But of course, as I say, relative to other parts of the world, we feel like we've been particularly blessed here in WA and in Perth. So hopefully we can continue on. But yeah, great to join you and talk all things F1, I guess. We're not going to talk about too much cricket, are we?
We are going to talk, well, we've already spoken a little bit about the race in Turkey. We were just talking about who's watched it. Tom watched it on replay a couple of times because he was down at the park with his kid. Liam watched it. Alastair was very excited by it. It was a thrilling race. Adam, obviously, you're the other side of the world. Time zones are difficult. Did you listen, watch back later?
The time zones generally have been beautiful for me here in Perth. That race, the Turkey race, started at 10 past 6 p.m. my time. The previous race was about 8 o'clock, I think. So it's been really nice on a Sunday night, and of course qualifying on Saturday. Watching those. So it's been a great time zone. Watch the start. The beautiful thing is my youngest boy, Ted, who's 9, has really got into watching this, and he's sort of seen the F1 on the computer game, and he says, "Look at this, Dad." And I said, "Yeah, well, that's Red Bull." And he goes, "What? You know the team colours?" And I said, "Yeah, I did a little bit of work in F1, and I've followed it for a few years now. So I've loved watching it with him." Watching the start. I was at a function, a pre-Christmas function on Sunday night. So I saw the start. I watched glimpses in the middle and saw the finish. But I'm sure you've been over this. Thoroughly deserved. What a champion Lewis is. And the greatest quality of champions I've come to find in sport is longevity. You've got to be around long enough and achieve the results for long enough to be considered a champion. And he's clearly, as you guys know better than me, he's ranks one of, if not the greatest.
So this is the debate we've all been having, obviously, is where do you rank Lewis Hamilton in terms of great sports people? Because what he's achieved is quite phenomenal, but yet he's still not loved and appreciated by everybody, which is strange. Liam.
It's a really tricky one. I mean, if you go over to the States, it's kind of brand recognition. I think there's a bit of that with it. The whole NASCAR and Indy thing is the big thing in the States, and probably the vast majority of sports watchers will have maybe heard of him and Michael Schumacher. So it's about your perception. But if you look in terms of the globe, I still believe it's the third biggest watched sport on the planet after the Olympics and the World Cup, which is only once every 4 years, and we have 22 races a year in F1. So as regards world brand recognition, then Lewis would be huge globally. But depending on where you go, I think it's kind of it's a sport that you're either completely mad into or you're unaware of. It's a weird one. It's the only kind of sport like that, I think, in a strange way. I don't think you can compare him to Michael Schumacher. It's just a different it's a different place in history that he's become legendary. Statistically, he's going to be, if not already, the most successful F1, which is, until another decade or 2 or 3 will not be touched. I mean, the guy is, has immortality now and well deserved. But to say is Fangio better, is Michael better, is Lewis better, they're just 3 legends. They're just on the legendary wall. Why compare?
To me, the reason I believe that he is the greatest of all time is that point that Adam mentioned almost as a throwaway line, and it's longevity. I mean, I first met him in 2007 when he was with McLaren, and I interviewed him at Woking, and we walked down, and you'll know this very well, Jenny, the trophy corridor at McLaren HQ. And I remember very clearly him saying, he got up to Ayrton Senna, he said, "He's my great hero, and one day I hope I might have a trophy next to Ayrton." And I said, "Well, I think you may well have a few more than that." And then if you just plot it briefly, the kind of childish competition that he saw in that first season that actually cost him the championship, then the maturity in the next season, then growing to grasp tyres, then growing to understand control. Longevity is absolutely it, but he's been absolutely at the top and prepared to leave McLaren for Mercedes at exactly the right time with great mentors like Niki Lauda and what have you. I mean, that's for me why longevity speaks to the whole package. I think he's got it in a way that no other driver I've ever followed has had before.
Can I ask a question of you guys who are absolutely, without doubt, much more knowledgeable on F1 than I am, having, and for those that don't know, I worked on the coverage down here in Australia for Channel 10 when they had it for about 4 years. And I was a bit of a novice before taking on that opportunity. And then I've just fallen in love with it and love every detail. And Liam, like you say, so many people that don't know the detail think it's just cars going round and round. We don't know, we don't care. But when you know all the intricate detail and learn about it, you're interested. What about in comparing Lewis to all the other drivers and someone like Schumacher, the years between 2008, his breakthrough, to, was it 2014 when he picked up his second championship? So those years in between, can you tell me, and people that might not be so aware of all the detail, how was he going through that period? What were the details of, was it just his biding his time until he got the right car, or was he fighting hard? Can you give me some detail on that and compare that to the other champions when they weren't necessarily in the best car?
You can tell he's a broadcaster now. He's asking the questions. And
Yeah.
Fun. Anyone want to go? Who'd like to have a stab at answering that?
I think you should, Jenny.
Oh, I should. Okay.
You're the oracle.
Well, now the pressure's forming. I would suggest that it is about the right time at the right place. We've seen greats like, Fernando Alonso should probably have won more than 2 world titles, but didn't, because he just didn't get himself into the right car at the right time. Thought by going to Ferrari he could build a team around him. Didn't happen. Vettel, in fairness, thought exactly the same. Leave Red Bull, go to Ferrari, build a team around me like Michael Schumacher did. Didn't happen. So you've got to be in the right place at exactly the right time. And I think Hamilton moving across was perfect, and it was a big gamble. I read something the other day that even his dad said, no, stay at McLaren. So he went against his dad, he went against everybody and just went, no, I'm going. And before that, I suppose you could say they were the wilderness years, really, from 2009 when Jenson Button beat him, all the way up really to when he made the move. And he just could not get that car performing to be better than a Red Bull, let's say. I mean, Red Bull were the dominant car. They were the Mercedes of their era. And Vettel, the car was designed for him. It was a beautiful car. So they almost had no chance, I suppose, during that time of winning a championship, no matter how good you are. So there is something in what people say about you've got to get in the right car. But you've got to be good enough to get in that car and stay in that car and make sure that car is the best car by helping your team. It is, after all, a team sport, I suppose.
I think the other thing is mentors and people who you listen to, which he has grown to. You're quite right about Anthony, but when the time came on the business front, he parted company with his dad. They're now back again, which is brilliant. But people like Ross Brawn, and later on I mentioned it already, Niki Lauda, have had such a huge impact. And I think Lewis, we often underrate his sheer brute intelligence. He knew what was going on at Red Bull. He knew how brilliant Vettel is. He still knows how brilliant Vettel is. And therefore he knew we got to do something different. We got to go off on version 3. And it was the brains of Ross Brawn. It was the money of Mercedes AMG. It was Niki Lauda hovering in the background. Yeah, that takes skill as much as it does taking turn 13 in the wet.
I think that goes to show it's much more than, his ability is incredibly intuitive. He understands not just the car. He constantly talks about he drives from his core, as he sat in that mode. And so much of it is intuitive. And that also then works into, the more business side of it, the decision making, the career defining choices and decisions that he goes through have been led by intuition and his self-belief to back that is the right decision to make. And that's, I think, what does make him an exceptional talent. He has a superhuman aura around him. If you're ever lucky enough to spend even just a minuscule of minutes with him, there is this, his persona is somebody that is very confident, but also accessible. And there is a sense of vulnerability about him. And I think the reason why so many people actually, he's a little Marmite. People absolutely love and adore him. I think he's the greatest thing ever. But you can also see why some people, because he is outspoken, because he follows his intuition, because he says what he believes, and he wears his heart on his sleeve. And sometimes people don't agree with that, and that will be why there is he is that slight divisiveness as a character, that there are people that don't 100% buy into him being one of the greatest sportsmen the world has ever seen. And I mean, he undoubtedly is. It's just because he's not got that kind of media personality. Like if you see a Premier League footballer that's interviewed after a match, the conversation is always the same. You know what the answer is going to be. You know what they're going to say. Where Lewis, there is a real sense of an individual, and that's what makes him incredibly special.
When he gets to the end of the race, he gets off. He's very technical about the problems that were during the car. He's incredibly professional and, in a sense, almost boringly wonderful. But do you know what I mean? But you know what I mean when he said. But when in the wet or whatever it is, they've had a problem. When he's in a fight, for that checkered flag, when he gets out of the car, his eyes are twice as the size. His adrenaline is going. He is a consummate racer, not just a winner, not just a champion. But the most excited I've ever seen him is when he's almost lost the race and he's pulled it out of the bag. He relishes a row. He does, you can tell he gets on with it. He's brilliant. He's professional. He's technical. He's magnificent in the car. He's faultless. But you can see he doesn't like the procession. He loves to win, but he loves a row much more. So Mansell had it as well. There could be some incredibly boring races that they get through, but give him a fight, and he loves a fight. And that's one of the things I love about Lewis. He doesn't want to just run away with it. He relishes the row.
Jenny, can I just very quickly chip on something? And I'd love to hear what Adam thinks about it. Because the other thing, listening there to Liam about it, is Lewis reminds me in another curious way of people like Federer and Djokovic in tennis. He remembers every single point, every game, every corner, every turn. And it goes onto the floppy disk, and he'll pull it down when he needs it. I mean, that is very rare in sports people, but it's almost as if Lewis remembers the entire catalogue, the entire canon, going right back to 2007, and applies a bit of knowledge at exactly the right moment. That's extraordinary.
Yeah, while you're driving at 200 miles an hour.
Yeah.
A bloke that lived his life at 200 miles an hour. You're reminding me of Shane Warne, my old teammate. If we're trying to work out whether those characteristics of Shane Warne, you mentioned, Alastair, about putting it on the hard drive at the back and tapping into it later. His attention to detail was as good as any. Someone mentioned earlier when Toto said, we've just got the buffer if we want to do another tyre change just to shore it up, and Lewis overrode it. He asks questions of his team, doesn't he? And I don't think he hides his passion and his desperation and desire to win. People might say he can, might come across as a bit of a sore, not a sore loser, but blaming someone else if it doesn't go his way. But often he'll ask questions on the radio through a race, pretty pointed questions, and then they end up winning. And, he always thanks the team. And I think a bit like Michael Jordan in that Last Dance, he just expects so much from the entire team to try and maintain the standards that he obviously can achieve and aspires to. He wants to bring them with him to maintain that highest level. And that's what Warnie used to do to us as a team. He used to ask us, those questions because he was good enough to get there, but he wanted to bring the whole team there. And I think, they're the qualities of the champion sportsmen and women.
How hard is it to keep up that level of success when you're a sports person? How much dedication does it take?
Absolute huge amount of commitment and dedication. Passion's got to come from within, and you can see just how much it means to Lewis and all those other champion sports people I just mentioned there. But I think complacency is the biggest enemy of the champions. That once you've reached the top, that's obviously the threat. As an outsider, I look at that Mercedes team and you look at the disappointment on them when they don't quite get it right, even if it's not closing out the front row for in qualifying. They're already, it looks like, a good day for Lewis, Valtteri maybe not, or vice versa, and all the way back through with Nico when he was there. Unless it's 1-2, they don't seem happy. So that as a team is an amazing mentality. And John Buchanan was coach of our very successful era in cricket. A lot of people used to say anyone could coach them. It's a team of Hall of Famers, but he used to have us preparing, training, planning as if we're number 2, just so that that gap never gets closed. And that's what I see from Mercedes for the last 7 years.
Running out of time, and I know you've all got busy schedules, even though we're in lockdown, apart from Liam, who can probably stay on today, that's fine. So what I wanted to ask you, have a little think about it. It's for your race of this season. And that could be which one you'd like to see back on the calendar. It could be the one that you found most exciting, whichever angle you want to take it from is fine. And also, you're not allowed to say Lewis, but I want your driver of the season. Lewis is too easy. He's probably the driver of this century. So you're not allowed to say Lewis, but who apart from Lewis has been impressive, has impressed you, or you've just found exciting? Let's start with Alastair.
Silverstone. When it was wearing the British Grand Prix hat, which was a spectacular race, and it always is. And my first connection with F1 was my maternal grandfather used to change tyres for Mike Hawthorne. So places like Brands Hatch and Silverstone have a very precious moment. I'm going to stick my neck out, and as someone who has said unpleasant things about Ferrari over the years, I'm going to say Charles Leclerc for a very odd reason, but it picks up on something that Tom and Liam and Adam were hinting at earlier on. And that is, if you've got real talent and you've got guts, you stick with the project. Can you imagine how good Leclerc would be if Ferrari weren't in such a design and engineering mess? And yet he stayed calm, he's thrown no wobblers, he's been a real ace team player. So I'd say Silverstone British Grand Prix and Charles Leclerc.
Lovely. Liam?
Oh, I'm going to have to go with the old school here because I'm so close to death. I'm going with Kimi Räikkönen's lap. His lap, not even the race. Imola. I think his quote after the race was, I thought they were in different cars. It was a different race. He overtook 11 cars on the first lap, like legitimately overtook. It was old school Kimi in a car that is, what is it, the 2015 Ferrari engine or something. It's like something ridiculous anyway. I think it's diesel. And to do what he did. And the same with Leclerc, same with Vettel on the first lap, the old heads and that steady hand. I love seeing that when the chips are down, when traction control is now used to it, when ABS is now used to it, when the intermediate tires are bald, and these boys can still drive and overtake and show a steady hand. And I just that's the raw driving skill from endless hours and 2 decades in a cockpit. And I just love seeing him. I mean, Kimi still got it. He's still hungry. Look at Vettel on the weekend. They're mad for the race. They haven't all the money they have, all the experience they have, and the fact that they've championships behind them. Sometimes a long time ago, that they still have that bite, that ambition, that competitiveness in their 40s. In Kimi's case, that makes my heart soar. It's wonderful.
I'm going to go for the kind of the underdogs and the ones that never get shouted about enough. So I'm going to say, I think Pierre Gasly winning in Monza was like the emotion of not just for him, which is amazing. He's had a bumpy couple of years, but not just that, but everybody within the circuit was so happy for him, was so pleased for him. That win was amazing. So I just think because it broke the norm, it's quite. I mean, it's a crazy old race, wasn't it? I mean, and then in terms of the way that. Unsung hero, driver of the year. You could go for all the obvious, but I really love watching how somebody little incremental steps is getting better and better all the time, and that's George Russell. And I really think there's a huge future for him. And I know Mercedes and he's but he is beginning to make a name for himself massively. And you look at what Lando Norris is doing, and Lando is fantastic. He's brilliant for the sport. His Instagram and his social media feed is brilliant. It's fantastic. It's engaging for so many new people into the sport. But I just think as a young talent of somebody that is doing very, very well, has done brilliantly this season. All right, not got on the podium almost, but I think George Russell has been fantastic this year. As a confidence booster for a young driver trying to break into a sport that he's going to be around for a long time. I don't think there should be any fear for him losing seats or not being able to find one rolling in seasons moving forward.
Adam.
Yeah, Tom, just on George Russell, was it the previous Grand Prix? Was that in Italy where just made a really simple mistake. I think trying to warm the tyres up, was it again? Or something?
The team told him to hit the brakes. They told him hit the brakes hard to keep it. There was an immediate instruction from the team, and he hit the brakes, and it swung.
Yeah, and he got out and sat just outside the track there, and marshals were going near. He was just smacking the ground.
It's heartbreaking, isn't it? When you see it, it's heartbreaking. You just go,
horrible. Yeah. You just wonder which chapter in his finished book that's going to be, and if he is holding a world championship, what his emotions will be reflecting on that. But it does rip your heart out. I've got to say the best one was in Germany, seeing the good old Aussie Danny Rick back on the podium. He got his shoey, which is probably not a bad thing in COVID times, but of course he did it a couple of races later, and Lewis even partook in it, which was risky business. But, I mean, what a dramatic year for him, and there's so much driver movement and uncertainty this year, but to have made his decision before the first race to jump to McLaren next year, and then started to get quite a lot out of that Renault and get that elusive podium since they sort of re-entered, and Cyril gets the tap. But we're big fans down here. Dan sort of grew up just up the road from where we live, and I'm still in contact with him. So that was terrific. And to think of that pairing next year with him and Lando at McLaren, that's a team dream, isn't it? To have a couple of, not so young now, but one of the young sort of younger drivers who are really marketable and really passionate about it, but they're sort of new age. So that's going to be really exciting to see. And as far as next year's calendar, let's just hope that it's a full calendar and Australia can have their Grand Prix that they missed out on this year.
What do you think our chances are, Adam? Are we going to be coming to Melbourne in March?
Well, all of a sudden, after a horrible time, Melbourne seems to be the safest place in Australia at the moment on the back of really strict lockdowns. But they've had 19 days without any community transmission, without any deaths. So they're reaping the rewards of that hard lockdown and hard work that they all put in. But I think we all know it's just we're going to have to learn how to manage this, not eradicate it until a vaccine hopefully turns up. But fingers crossed, we'll get through the Boxing Day test first, and then we'll get to March with the Grand Prix.
I think it'll be successful. The bubble is working. The bubble has proved to be. I mean, it's not great. I was talking to Andy Stevenson, the sport director at Racing Point, and he hasn't seen anybody apart from the team since March. I mean, that's psychologically that's got to be really tricky, and apart from incredibly boring as well, I'd imagine. But to keep that level of enthusiasm going, because it's the edge that gets you through. It's when everything comes together, and the pressure of doing that, the personal pressure of trying to be professional when your personal life is all over the place because you don't really have one, social life or anything like that. It's even more remarkable. I've fingers crossed for a full season next year, even if the pandemic is still going as it's going. I'm quite positive about it, or optimistic about it anyway.
Well, I think optimism is needed by everybody at the moment. Thank you all so much for sparing your time. It's been brilliant to chat to you and listen to all of your thoughts about F1. We could go on all day, but we can't. So thank you, and goodbye. And I hope life treats you very well.
Thank you very much, Jenny.
Thanks, Jenny.
See you later.
Thanks for having us, Jenny. Thank you.
You're more than welcome. Bye, everyone.
Jen. See you later, chaps.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.